why are we talking about this ridiculous esoteric idea of the mind with a professor when we're going to hell in a handbasket? Why would we do that? Like, that's, yeah, oh, you've got the luxury to have this conversation, right? And then there's this belief that, if you're totally, completely consumed with rage and anger and defeat and all of these things, you're, I don't know, somehow doing something.
Yeah, I mean that's funny because the last couple of videos I did on my YouTube channel, I think I did get some people who had that response. Like, what are you talking about? The mind? What do you and of course the one of the main tricks the mind uses is it says that its story is reality. And when we buy into the story, we confuse it with reality itself. And it's very difficult to intellectually get around that. To me, it's always experience. Go back. When was the last time? And you may have had some medical test and you couldn't sleep all night and you just thought for sure they're going to turn out horrible and then everything was fine. You sent an email out at work and you were absolutely certain you're going to be fired. The mind kept you up all night saying you're going to be fired, but you
Yeah.
weren't. In fact, your boss thought it was hilarious. I mean,
Yeah.
these things happen. I make up some of this stuff, but a lot of it's just from experiences
Sure.
in my life where my mind was so convinced, like, this is going to happen and it's absolutely certitude. And it wasn't, nothing even like that. When we go back, how often were we absolutely convinced that this was a tragedy? And then we have time and we can see the mind from afar. And it was like, well, that wasn't a tragedy. That was a blessing, you know? And so,
Right.
uh, the, when you look and say, well, the world's going to hell in a handbasket, uh, are you certain about that? What makes you say that? What kind of mechanisms convinced you of that? Now, again, the mind's going to say, look, the world has gone to hell in a handbasket several times in the past. So I definitely know it's going this time. And
Right.
that's, again, one of those things the mind will play to convince you that its story is accurate. So one of the things you can do too, and I talk a lot about the split brain patients, and these are people who literally had the left and right sides of their brains. The connection was severed. And this left the left brain isolated. So it no longer had any influence from the right brain. And what they discovered is the tendency for the left brain to make up stories. And it was so easy for the left brain to make up one story after another. And that was a huge insight. That's why Michael Gazzaniga, who he was the doctor who was in charge of these patients, and he called the left brain the interpreter because it has no ability to not create an interpretation. And so the world going to hell in a handbasket is an interpretation.
Mm.
And you can discover this. The interpreter is one of the easiest things to discover if you do a simple practice. So for the rest of the day, as you walk around with other people, as you live your life, you will hear a voice in the head. This is the left brain interpreter, and it's always on. Oh, that person looks sad. That person might be angry with me. Uh, oh, that car's following me too closely. Well,
I
that
should have
person.
seen that. I got to get
Yeah.
through. That's
Oh,
a, yeah. Like,
oh
oh, I
my
can't believe
goodness.
I said that.
Yeah, I've got to lose weight. I've got to, it's continuously uh, creating an interpretation of the world around you. And if you say, okay, and again, let's turn it off. Well,
Yeah.
again, we can challenge anyone watching this. Okay, for the next 10 seconds, let's turn the interpreter off. Ready? Go.
Can't be done.
It's going to continue. And then my mind always says, "Oh, this is silly." Something like so mine it's a and the interpreter is predictable. It is something that's become a subject of science and to recognize again its inability to stop making things up.
So how does it fit with the polarity, right? Like, because what happens is you have one group of people that is making one thing up, and then you have another group of people that's making another thing up. And then there's a lot of solace that's found in hanging out with the people that are making up the same thing that you're making up. And there's no belief it's being made up, of course.
Yeah. I think that is to some degree we can blame our phones and social media for that because that whatever interpretation your left brain has, the your phone is going to exaggerate that interpretation because it's going to show you all the rest of the I mean, we can look at beliefs like flat earthers,
Yeah.
and we can kind of pick on them and say, oh, well, look, you really believe something. The rest of us find this absolutely absurd. But, you believe in it. But we might be just as susceptible. When you're identifying with the mind, beliefs are very predictable, very easy to influence. And of course, people know this, and that's why around elections, the fear button gets pushed in everyone. They know how the thinking mind works, and so push the fear button, you know, and I think that happened to a very large degree, and but so it's all an identity problem. And who are we? Talk about an
Mhm.
old question, something that we've wrestled with. Who are we? What is reality? Two
Yeah.
of the biggest questions, and when you see the tendency for the mind to to so superficially make things up based on no evidence or very little evidence, it becomes more and more difficult to believe that you were ever the mind in the first place. And so who cares? I love this. It was Ramana Maharshi and Nisargadatta, and they both came to this absolute conclusion, like, you're not your mind. So who cares what it does? So what if it believes the earth is flat? I mean, that doesn't really, is that really, what does that do during
Yeah.
the day? Maybe you don't believe that the humans ever walked on the moon. It's an abstraction. And so, one of the things I'm working on, and I have a new book out pretty soon, but it's all about how the mind makes up these abstractions that seem seductively meaningful, but they're
Yeah.
really not. They really have very little meaning. And that's the trick of language. And of course, everything the mind does. So there's this little spot here called Broca's area that allows me to talk, but it also is responsible for the voice in the head. And so when we're creating language, we're creating these abstractions. Even when we say something like, oh, I just don't feel very attractive, and I don't think anyone will be attracted to me. That's kind of made up. And what I mean by that is when you really dig down, you say, well, what do you think attraction is? And so here we can turn to science. Like, what is attraction? And so when you turn out a bunch of people and then you morph them all together, so you statistically average the eyes and you average the distance between the mouth and the nose. When you average all that, that face is more attractive than any of the individual faces. So when it comes down to it, what we find attractive is someone who's average.
Mm.
And so it's so the mind plays these tricks and it says, oh, you're not average enough. And so would you rather be average or a unique creation of the universe?